When your body settles into a hush so profound that even your own heartbeat seems distant, you may be tempted to think you have become hollowed out. Yet paradoxically, this apparent emptiness is not a void, but a vibrant sanctuary. When you as a woman decide deliberately, or by the gentle drift of circumstances, to withdraw from the endless chase, for fleeting pleasures, something in you begins to stir. It is not absence, but presence. It is not diminishment, but expansion. Imagine that the tender quiet of abstinence is the opening refrain to a song the soul has long been singing in secret, waiting for the world's demands to subside so its melody can be heard. In the atmosphere of modern life where every scroll and swipe competes for your lust silence can feel like exile. Society conditions you to believe that your worth is bound to your visibility, your desirability, and your capacity to please. Yet Carl Jung reminds us that any energy we stifle has no choice but to find a new path. When the body pauses, the psyche awakens. Have you ever wondered why so many women emerge from periods of abstinence describing vivid dreams, sharpened intuition, and a sense of clarity that feels like a revelation? It is no accident. It is a calling. When the instruments of desire fall quiet, the shadow self finally has space to cast its shape. And in that shadow you discover facets of your being that no amount of external validation could ever reveal. Pause for a moment and consider this. What if the very impulses that the world teaches you to satisfy are the veils that obscure your true power? What if through silence you commune with a tape of wisdom recorded by ancestors whose voices time has faded but whose presence lingers in the marrow of your bones? In the hushed corridor of your own being, you may find the archetype of the wild woman, untamed, untouchable, and unapologetically sovereign. This wild self does not covet the gaze of onlookers nor yearn for applause. She is rooted in a truth that transcends fleeting admiration, the truth of her own authenticity. Still stepping into this inner sanctum is an act of rebellion. The world fears the woman who no longer needs to be seen to be valued, who no longer relies on another's touch to feel alive. Her unpredictability shatters the comfortable patterns of emotional exchange, and her mystery unsettles those who thrive on the script of desire. You may face questions: why have you disappeared? Why are you becoming distant? But these questions are themselves an offering. They reveal how deeply others depend on your compliance to feel secure. If you remain, the revolution begins within. Consider Jung's notion of individuation, a journey toward wholeness that requires the integration of all parts of the self, including the shadow you once denied. When you embrace abstinence, you are not rejecting love or beauty. You are reclaiming the love that arises internally and the beauty that is born of your own reflection. As your body retreats from the external, your soul steps forward, and in that stepping, you transmute longing into purpose. Desire, once a roaring flame demanding immediate relief, becomes a sacred ember lighting a path that leads deeper into your own heart. Perhaps you have felt that first tremor, a question that bubbles up unexpectedly. Who am I when I'm not defined by being chosen? In that moment, something shifts. The familiar rhythms of seeking and surrender are replaced by an inner cadence, your own pulse. And as you listen, you hear fragments of an older conversation, one that speaks of destiny rather than duty. You realize that your essence is not an object to be possessed, but a presence to be honored. Imagine the ancient mystics who sat in caves, their bodies motionless, their minds ablaze with visions. They called this practice renunciation, but renunciation did not mean resignation. It meant turning the gaze inward, refining the lens of perception until every sensation became a hue in the palette of awareness. In that same spirit, when you allow your body to rest from the dictates of desire, you are refining your sensitivity. You become attuned to subtleties, the way light plays on the walls of your mind, the textures of memory that once resided in corners too dim to notice. You might wonder, will this path leave me stranded? Will the echoes of my own solitude become deafening? The answer lies in remembering that the soul does not speak in echoes but in resonances. It vibrates through the chambers of your being, calling forth wisdom that transcends your personal narrative. When the clamor of obligations subsides, you discover that you have never been truly alone. There has always been a presence guiding you, a matrix of insight woven into the warp and weft of your consciousness. Abstinence is the key that unlocks this hidden library, and your willingness to walk into its silence is the invitation. So here we stand at the beginning of an ancient ceremony, stripped of urgency, tethered only by the promise of depth. In the coming minutes, we will trace the contours of this ceremony, the reasons to embark, the trials to endure, and the treasures awaiting on the far side. We will honor the paradox that in stepping away, you step closer to the most potent expression of yourself. We will celebrate the rebellion of a woman who refuses to be reduced to any role other than the one she writes with her own hand, the author of her own soul's destiny. And when that moment comes, when you hear the first clear whisper of purpose, you will know that the silence of the body was never an exile but a homecoming. Now listen closely to the echoes stirring around you. They are not the frantic cries of deprivation, but the hushed vibrations of awakening. When you step back from the glare of judgment and the choreography of desire, the world grows uneasy, as though it senses the emergence of something it cannot tame. Society has built its edifices on the premise that a woman's value is measured by her availability, her compliance, her willingness to play the roles handed to her. Yet when you choose to withdraw even for a moment, you ignite a flame they cannot control. Have you felt that subtle shift in the atmosphere, as if your absence from the stage leaves a vacancy so profound that onlookers strain to fill it? Friends may urge you to rejoin the dance of flirtation. Family may express concern that you are closing your heart, and partners may question your motives as if silence itself were an offense. But understand this, it is not your absence that threatens them, but the light you kindle in that absence. The collective psyche recoils when the wild woman within you begins to breathe again. In Jungian terms, this recoil is the world's protest against your encounter with the shadow, the hidden parts of yourself you suppressed to maintain harmony with external expectations. The shadow holds the raw soil of your instincts, the fierce will you buried to avoid disapproval. When you cease seeking approval, the shadow begins to speak. You may experience dreams that feel like messages from another realm, visions that carry symbolic echoes of your unspoken needs and deepest longings. This inward turn can feel like descending into a cave whose walls are lined with memories you thought you had buried forever. A phrase surfaces in your mind. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. You begin to recognize that the desires you once chased like mirages were shadows themselves, imperfect copies of a longing that could only be satisfied by turning deeper within. Each moment of temptation, each whisper urging you to return to familiar comforts, becomes a test of faith in your own emerging truth. As this dialogue with the shadow unfolds, you may uncover parts of yourself that feel alien, untended grief for relationships that never honored your true self, anger at the compromises you made to fit in, and impulses toward freedom you silenced to avoid rejection. These buried facets do not wish to harm you, they yearn to liberate you. By acknowledging them without judgment, you integrate them into your conscious awareness, and in doing so, you reclaim the power they carried. Consider the wild woman archetype, a figure who appears across cultures as a symbol of our profound bond with instinct and nature. This integration is not a tidy resolution, but a sacred ongoing ritual. She is the huntress, the healer, the seer. She is the song of wolves and the pulse of the earth beneath your feet. By allowing abstinence to quiet the clamor of surface urges, you give her the space to emerge. She awakens not as a stigma of rebellion, but as a herald of wholeness, reminding you that you were never meant to be fragmented, never meant to serve only the desires of others. Without the distraction of external demands, your senses sharpen. You notice the subtle textures of the wind, the way light filters through a half-open door, the melody in your own breath. These observations are not trivial. They are signposts on the path back to yourself. The vibration of existence hums through your veins, reminding you that you are not merely a passive observer, but an active co-creator of reality. Each sensation becomes a lesson, each pause a portal. The wild woman within you guides your steps through this uncharted terrain. Yet this awakening is not a single event, it is an evolving conversation. Each day in silence offers new revelations. Each night brings messages through the realm of dreams. You begin to journal these visions, translating the language of the unconscious into the tapestry of your life through words, art, or movement. In this way, abstinence becomes not deprivation, but invitation to pleasure of a deeper order, to delight in knowing yourself fully, savoring the richness of your own presence. What you are experiencing is a profound realignment. The energy once spent in pursuit of validation is now redirected into the sacred vessel of the self. That vessel, once cracked by outside pressures, is now being sealed and fortified by your own intention. You strengthen its walls with acts of self-care and rituals that honor your body as a temple rather than a commodity walking barefoot on the earth, engaging in mindful breathwork, communing with art that resonates with your heart's frequency. In time, you may observe a transformation in your relationships. The old patterns of codependence and seeking approval dissolve, replaced by connections rooted in mutual presence. You no longer measure your worth by someone's gaze. Instead, you meet each soul as an equal participant in the dance of life. People are drawn to your authenticity not because you perform for them, but because you emanate an energy that feels both ancient and refreshingly new. As Part 2 draws to a close, feel the stirring of recognition in your bones. This phenomenon you are living is not an anomaly, but a universal rite of passage. Across epochs, women have undertaken this journey, returning as oracles, mystics, healers. In your own way, you are reclaiming that lineage. The path may be lonely at times, but solitude is not isolation. It is solidarity with your soul's deepest longing. You stand at the threshold of transformation, where the veils between the physical and the spiritual simply dissolve, revealing the luminous essence that has always been your true home. Remember, the world's fear of your silence is a testament to your power. Let that knowledge fortify you. As you continue honoring the conversation between your conscious self and the shadow, you weave a new narrative, one in which you are both the seeker and the sought, the question and the answer. And in this narrative, the wild woman within you takes her rightful place as guide, reminding you always that when the body is still, the soul speaks. As you step more fully into this inner pilgrimage, you may find yourself caught in a tempest of doubt and unease, as though the very ground beneath your feet has shifted. Abstinence is not the gentle retreat it may appear from afar. It is a crucible in which every belief you held about yourself is tested. In the quiet that follows the withdrawal of external gratifications, the echoes of societal expectations reverberate more loudly than ever before. Questions arise unbidden. Am I wrong to deny myself what brings pleasure? Have I isolated myself to the point of self-sabotage? Is this journey a luxury I cannot truly afford? Such doubts bite at the edges of your resolve, demanding that you explain, justify, or relent. This phase is the cleansing before rebirth, the soul's equivalent of a spiritual fast designed to flush out the toxins of conformity. You may notice old patterns creeping back, the habit of seeking reassurance through flirtatious banter, or the compulsion to present yourself in ways that elicit praise. Each impulse to revert feels like a betrayal to the promise you made in the hush to listen first to your inner voice before answering the world's summons. It is precisely here at this juncture of fiercest temptation that the alchemy of transformation takes place. Carl Jung described this ordeal as part of the individuation process, a confrontation between the ego, the identity you have cultivated to navigate external realities, and the self, the totality of your psyche. When you cease to gratify the cravings of the ego, it protests. Anxiety mounts and the conscious mind scrambles to maintain control through distraction or self-reproach. You might find yourself reliving past regrets or obsessing over future uncertainties, as if the ego were casting shadows of fear to coax you back into familiar but ultimately limiting patterns. Allow these shadows to fall without flinching. Each pang of discomfort, each spiraling thought is a clue, a signal that something within you is seeking your attention. Rather than labeling these experiences as errors or failures, view them as sacred invitations to witness the contents of your own psyche. When you sit with these feelings, when you hold them tenderly and explore their contours, you practice the very courage that individuation demands. You learn that your capacity to withstand inner turmoil is the foundation upon which your emerging wholeness rests. During this interval, solitude can feel like abandonment, as though you have been left to navigate an uncharted labyrinth without a guide. Yet remember that the soul's journey is never solitary. Beneath the turbulence, there is a current of deeper wisdom, like a subterranean river moving beneath a rocky bed. It carries with it the ancestral echoes of women who ventured into similar depths. Priestesses, mystics, visionaries, each returning with gifts of insight. You need not summon them, simply trust that their presence supports you. To navigate these trials, establish small rituals that anchor you to the sacred reality of your own emergence. Perhaps you light a candle each morning reciting an affirmation that reminds you of your intention. I choose to hear my own heart's counsel. Maybe you carry a stone in your pocket, a talisman of solidity, touching it whenever you feel unmoored. In the evening, you might keep a journal beside your bed, pouring onto its pages the raw contents of your experience without editing or justifying. These acts, though modest, weave threads of continuity through the fragmentation, holding you fast to your chosen path. You may also sense an internal dialogue intensifying the part of you longing to retreat to comfort and the part of you urging forward into the unknown. Honor both. The yearning for ease is not shameful. It is the body's natural call for care. Yet the voice that calls you onward is the whisper of your destiny. When you position yourself between these poles, neither denying rest nor abandoning the quest, you learn the art of dynamic balance. This delicate dance is the very essence of individuation, to integrate opposites without being consumed by either. In these moments of tension, reach for the concept of shadow integration. Instead of projecting your fears and insecurities onto others, turn your gaze inward. If you notice yourself labeling someone as too needy or too demanding, consider that you may be confronting an aspect of yourself you've judged harshly. By reclaiming these projections, you gather lost pieces of your psyche, reintegrating them into a fuller portrait of who you are. This process is neither rapid nor painless, but it is the bedrock of genuine freedom. As Part 3 draws to a close, you stand on the threshold of profound possibility. The crucible of abstinence has rendered you vulnerable, but vulnerability is the raw material of authenticity. By enduring these trials, by facing the ego's panic, tending the shadows, and honoring both comfort and courage, you prepare the vessel of your being for something greater than mere survival. You ready yourself for the next phase where temptations will rise again, but this time you will have acquired a deeper reservoir of self-trust. And so, with compassion for the discomfort and reverence for the process, you step forward into the next chapter of this inner unfolding. And now, armed with the fierce clarity of your own intention, you encounter the crossroads of temptation. Like shadows flickering at the entrance to a cave, old patterns arise, beckoning you to return to the familiar warmth of fleeting gratifications. You feel the tug of flirtatious banter, the whisper of a curious glance, the memory of a laugh that once promised acceptance. These are not failures, but thresholds, gates that guard the treasure of your becoming. Each invitation to compromise your resolve is an opportunity to choose yourself anew. Imagine that inside you lies a chrysalis, a delicate structure woven from the fibers of your own resolve. It trembles as you approach the point of greatest pressure, the moment when the cocoon must tighten before the butterfly can break free. This tightening is the crucible of transformation, the inner alchemy by which dependency transmutes into self-sovereignty. You may feel constricted, as though the very act of maintaining your boundaries has squeezed the air from your lungs. Yet within that constriction lies the necessary resistance that forges your emerging wings. When the impulse to return to old rhythms grows most insistent, pause and breathe. Notice the tension in your body, the rapid flutter of the heart, the rush of thoughts racing toward relief. Acknowledge the pull of comfort without judgment. Then gently remind yourself, I do not abandon my power for a momentary thrill. I choose the light of my own becoming. Speak this affirmation aloud if you must. Let its vibration reverberate through the hollow of your throat, a sacred chant that reclaims you from the clutches of distraction. In those decisive moments, rituals become your allies. Perhaps you pause to cup your hands over a bowl of water, letting the cool surface reflect your gaze. You pour a drop of essential oil onto your palm, a fragrant elixir that reminds you that every scent is a gateway to memory, to meaning, to choice. Or you trace a path with your fingertip around a candle's flame, acknowledging that fire both consumes and illuminates. These acts, though small, anchor you in the certainty that you are actively shaping your destiny rather than passively drifting on the currents of habit. As you cultivate these practices, you begin to perceive the subtle shifts in your energy. The familiar ache of desire transforms into a quiet thrum of vitality, a heartbeat that resonates not with longing for another, but with deep appreciation for your own aliveness. This is the transmutation at the heart of abstinence. What once felt like deprivation becomes a torrent of restoration. The energy once spent seeking external validation returns to you, filling the hollow spaces with the fullness of your own presence. You may notice changes in your daily life. A sudden clarity in decision-making, a heightened sensitivity to the nuances of conversation, an ability to listen more deeply to your own needs. Relationships that once revolved around superficial exchange now shift toward genuine connection. You no longer measure affection by the intensity of pursuit, but by the steadiness of mutual respect. Those who remain in your orbit do so not because they wish to possess you, but because they value the integrity you radiate. Yet transformation is never linear. There will be days when the cocoon feels unbearably tight, and you wonder if you overestimated your own courage. On those days, return to the practice of shadow integration. When self-doubt surfaces, ask, what am I afraid of losing? If you hear the answer, approval, comfort, love, allow yourself to feel that fear fully. Then hold it as you would hold a frightened child, offering compassion rather than chastisement. By embracing your fear without resistance, you neutralize its power to pull you off course. Remember that Carl Jung taught us the value of the psychic union of opposites. Just as daylight gains meaning from the night that precedes it, your strength arises from the acceptance of your own vulnerability. When you honor both facets, the untamed wildness and the tender fragility, you weave a more vibrant tapestry of selfhood. You are neither a stoic monolith nor a quivering leaf. You are the living interplay of both a dance between power and surrender. In time, you will recognize that the cocoon has served its purpose. The voice that once whispered through uncertainty now speaks with authority. You will catch glimpses of wings unfurling new passions that align with your deepest values. Creative endeavors that draw upon the wellspring of your inner truth and a sense of purpose that feels as inevitable as sunrise. This is the fruit of your vigil, the harvest of your refusal to settle for half-lived existence. As Part 4 reaches its culmination, take a moment to celebrate how far you have come. The temptations you resisted, the shadows you welcomed, and the rituals you enacted have all conspired to birth a being who is both more tender and more indomitable than before. You have transformed the silence of abstinence into a symphony of self-realization, a testament to the power that emerges when you stop consuming the world and begin to cultivate the garden within. When you are ready, step through the threshold that awaits at the end of this chapter. On the other side lies the moment of full emergence, a place where your soul's song resounds without apology and your presence becomes the living altar upon which every future choice is consecrated. And now you stand at the summit of your inward odyssey, the landscape transformed by every shadow you met, every temptation you resisted, and every ritual you honored. No longer are you merely a seeker wandering the corridors of your own psyche. You have become the embodiment of Jung's self, the archetype that unites all facets of your being into a harmonious whole. Gone is the woman who measured her worth by the intensity of external demands. In her place stands a sovereign whose presence alone is sufficient. You feel it in the way you breathe, calm, deliberate, as if each inhalation draws new wisdom into your bones, and each exhalation releases the fragments of an identity you once outgrew. The wild woman who awakened in the cave of your solitude now merges with the conscious self who navigates the daylight world with unshakable poise. This integration is not a static achievement, but a living, breathing dynamic, a river that flows between mystery and clarity, passion and equanimity, instinct and reflection. In this elevated state, you experience a new relationship with time. There is no urgency to fill every moment, no fear that stillness is wasted. Instead, each interval of quiet becomes an invitation to listen more deeply to the rhythm of your own heartbeat, to the unspoken needs of your spirit, and to the whispers of possibility that echo through your dreams. Time becomes a companion rather than an adversary, a teacher rather than a tyrant. Your connections to others transform as well. Where once you sought validation through performance, you now give and receive from a place of authentic resonance. Conversations flow not as transactions, but as shared explorations of meaning. People gravitate toward your steadiness, drawn by the magnetic pull of someone who has learned to dwell in the fullness of her own soul. You no longer chase approval. You inspire it naturally by the integrity you embody. And so you find yourself called to a greater mission, a beacon rather than a battleground. The very path you walked in solitude has prepared you to guide others, not by prescribing formulas, but by modeling what is possible when a woman chooses herself first. You speak of rituals that honor the body as temple of ceremonies that consecrate the inner sanctuary, and of the courage required to endure the crucible of transformation. Your message is not one of dogma, but of invitation. Come and silence the noise. Come and hear the song your soul has always sung. Perhaps you will share your story in a journal, weaving your experiences into words that resonate with other wanderers. Perhaps you will offer a circle of women a space to practice these rituals together, lighting candles in solidarity and speaking affirmations into the hush. Or perhaps in the simple day-to-day interactions you will carry the quiet confidence of one who knows her own depth, shifting the energy of every room you enter. Now, if this journey has stirred something within you, I invite you to honor the calling. Leave a comment below sharing the moment when your own body first spoke its secret and how you answered. If you feel called to dive deeper, subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a ritual of transformation. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that silence is not defeat, but the altar upon which their true power is consecrated. Remember Jung's words, "What we resist persists, what we integrate transforms." You have integrated your absences, your fears, your shadow, and in doing so you have transmuted them into power. Your body may have fallen silent, but your soul now speaks with a clarity that will never be dimmed. When love finds you again, it will not be a desperate grasp, but a celebration of overflow. So stand in your fullness, dear woman. Let your presence be the living proof that abstinence was not an ending, but a beginning, a birthing of the self, the union of all that you are. Your next breath is not mere survival, it is sacred communion. And as you walk forward, remember that each choice you make from this place of wholeness fans the ember of possibility in others. Go forth in silence if you must, but know that in your silence you kindle a blaze that the world can neither extinguish nor ignore.